everybody and welcome back. As always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ Crafting podcast and this is episode 60. I hope you've all had a wonderful week. Hope you've had lots of crafting time. If not, then I hope you have found little bits of time here and there to pick up the crafts that you love. I am coming to you from an incredibly wet and rainy morning here in the southeast of the UK. So it's a really nice day to sit down and chat about my knitting. I've got myself a hot cup of tea. I hope you've got a nice beverage or a little snack or your craft of choice. And without further waffle, let's get into the projects that I have to share today. So to start with, I will let you guys know what I am wearing. So this is the Salty Days sweater by Veronika Lindberg, and I knit this up out of Drops Lima. I'm not 100% sure what the colourway was, but it's this lovely kind of like taupe brown, and I knit this up in size 1. And I wear this a fair bit, to be honest, and it is kind of wearing as well as I would expect it to for a like alpaca wool mix yarn. There is definitely quite a lot of pilling going on the sleeves, which I do need to sort out at some point, but it is a lovely sort of layer and I really feel like it's kind of coming into its own now in the spring because there are so many eyelets and everything in here. It is a little bit kind of breezy in the colder months, but it is really nice now that it is a little bit warmer and I don't really need such like a bulky layer. So yeah, I've just got a little camisole on underneath this today and I am pretty comfortable, to be honest. I don't feel like there's too much wind coming in. Obviously it is quite a wet and gloomy day today, so it's not really like I'm going out without a jacket on, but it's definitely a nice layer to have on just to keep me a little bit warmer whilst it's still just that little bit chilly. But yeah, I am really enjoying having this and I really do love the pattern. I think it's a really lovely pattern to knit up. So yeah, so that is what I'm wearing, and let's get into my finished objects. So I feel like it's been one of those weeks where I haven't like had like a main project to focus on. I've kind of like picked a couple of bits up, worked on them a little bit, and then put them down and then worked on something else. So everything's had a little bit of progress, but nothing's had like huge amounts of progress. Anyway, without further waffle, I have got 2 whips and 4 finished objects. No, that's the wrong way around. I've got 2 finished objects and 4 whips to talk about today. So yeah, without further waffle, let's get into those. So my first finished object is a toy pattern that I knit up as a little gift for my daughter this year for Easter. And this is one of the Nibbles Bunnies by CINTHIA VALLET. So this is just the base pattern. There are a couple of notes in the pattern to add little different characteristics to your bunny, like changing up the ears or adding in duplicate stitch or various other bits and bobs to kind of make different variations of the pattern, but I just used the base pattern because, to be honest, I decided to cast this on far too close to Easter to be able to make like design decisions like that. It was a bit of a spur of the moment, oh, I'll make her this for Easter, and then realised that it was like 4 or 5 days away. So yeah, this is just the base pattern. There are also patterns in the pattern for clothes for the bunnies, and I obviously didn't get a chance to knit clothes for this one. I don't really think it was too much of an issue, to be honest. I might go back and knit some clothes for this bunny sort of in the future, but it wasn't really a priority this week. And the reason I decided to knit up one of these is because this is the perfect size for my daughter's doll's house, so they kind of fit well into there. She also has one of the bears, which is the smaller bear, which is about the same size as this, and that works really well in her doll's house. So she really likes to play with them in there. So I thought that this would be a nice little Easter addition for her. So they knit up into one size. You use a fingering weight yarn and a 2mm needle. And so this is Drops Alpaca in the colour brown, which I've had like one skein of hanging around in my stash to make one of these toys for ages. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it and make this toy. And these patterns are so fun to knit up. I mean, they're not quick knits. They take some time because they're quite intricate and they're obviously knit up on very small needles. So they do take, they're not like a quick toy knit. They do take some time, but I think that time is well worth it because they do come out so nicely. and they are completely seamless. So you essentially start at the tip of the nose, and then like you work using increases and short rows to then shape the head, and then you are sort of prompted to add in markers for where the eyes and the ears will go. So there's no problems with them being like skew whiff when you put them in, or not being in the right place, because you're guided through that, and then it's essentially just pick up the stitches or just place your safety eyes where you need them. So I love that, because I hate sewing up toys, I really do. I like knitting them, but I'm not a fan of like having to sew on loads of tiny pieces, which is also why I like the Imagine Landscape gnomes, because there's not a huge amount of sewing up involved. So yeah, these are like the perfect toy patterns for me, not wanting to sew up a lot of different parts. So yeah, you then work down using short rows to shape the neck and everything, and then you're prompted to add in your eyes and ears, because it's a bit tricky once you get further down. And add on your nose, which I just embroidered on with some, I think it was just some scrap yarn from my sock stash. I can't quite remember now. It really wasn't very much yarn at all. And then you split essentially, well, you knit down to about here, and then you split for your arms, and you knit your arms in the round. I knit the entirety of mine on magic loop. I think there are instructions in the pattern for DPNs as well, but they are predominantly sort of written for magic loop. And yeah, so then you knit your arms, and then you come back to finish off the body, and then you knit the legs, and they're all shaped using short rows as well, and you are prompted to add in markers for the little tail. And then once you finish the legs and the feet, you add on the tail, and you can go back and sew in all your ends and everything, and you're left with like a gap here where you can then sort of put all the stuffing in, and then you just sew that up, and you have a finished bunny, and you don't have to do any finishing work because it's all done and it's all nice and ready to go and everything. You can block them before you stuff them, but to be honest, I don't do that, and I think this has come out perfectly fine. And I think the alpaca that I used has worked really well to like fill in any extra gaps or anything I have from where I've stuffed it, because I do stuff these quite sort of, so they're pretty solid, they're not like floppy or anything, and that's because I know that she's going to play with this a fair amount, and when she does I feel like it gets a little bit sort of more well worn and a little bit sort of more malleable, like the stuffing kind of compacts in there. And so yeah, I do try and like shove as much stuffing as I can in there for her at the beginning, so they don't kind of become really misshapen. So yeah, this is a really cute little, not a quick knit, but a fun, like engaging knit. And I think my daughter is going to really enjoy playing with it. She already has really enjoyed playing it over the Easter weekend. And yeah, I think it's going to be a real nice little addition to her sort of little collection of knitted toys. And I think I will go back and like create some clothes for it at some point, but to be honest, it's not really all that high up on my priority list, and I'm happy that she's just getting some use out of it even without clothes. So I cast this on April the 15th, and I cast it off on April the 19th, and so it took me a grand total of 5 days to knit. And cost wise, the pattern costs £4.93, and for one ball of the Drops alpaca it's roughly about £2.72 at the moment. However, I only used about 20 grams, so if you have like an odd mini skein or like sort of quarter of a skein of sock yarn or whatever lying around in your stash, then I think you could probably make one out of just that. I'm pretty sure that I used less than 20 grams, but I'd say 20 grams just to kind of be on the safe side. So the grand total for this project was about £7.65. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest. And I'm glad that I managed to use up some of my stash yarns, and I think this is just so cute. I love a CINTHIA Ballet toy pattern. She's definitely like my go-to because of the seamless construction and just how well written her patterns are. There's so many notes in there just to kind of like help if you are a beginner knitter, or if like you're new to knitting toys and are unsure of any of the techniques and things. It's just, yeah, they're really, really good, like top-notch toy knitting patterns, and I would definitely recommend. So that is my Nibbles Bunny. I'll pop her back there. Not that you can see her now, but you know, she can chill back there for the rest of this episode. So my other finished object is a pair of socks, and these are my COLORWORK Cuff Club socks, and these are the January chart. So this is a pattern by Summer Lee. I won't go into the ins and outs of the COLORWORK Cuff Club because I feel like I've done that so many times, and I feel like a lot of you are probably familiar with this pattern. If not, all of the patterns, yarns, makers, everything is all linked down below in the description, as well as things like my Instagram, my Ravelry, yeah, anything that you might need is always down in the description. So yes, these are the January chart for the COLORWORK Cuff Club, which is, as I said, a pattern by Summer Lee, and I knit up size medium, and I used a 2mm and a 2.25mm needle, as always with my socks. These ones were slightly different though, because I used the 2mm needle for my ribbing and then the 2.25 for the rest of the sock instead of going down for my colour work. And actually I do kind of wish I had gone down a needle size for the colour work, because I think it's definitely more apparent in the green that my stitches are just a little bit looser for the colour work. And I think even though in the pattern she said to knit the colour work on the same needle that you would usually knit your socks on for like the stockinette portion, I think that instruction was relevant for people who have to go up a needle size for their colour work, but I don't think it was necessarily the best plan for me, because I usually have to go down a needle size for my colour work. So I do kind of wish that I had gone down a needle size, because I think you can definitely see like a discrepancy between my stitches in my stockinette portions and in my colourwork portion. But to be honest, I'm not all that fussed about it. It hasn't made them like really baggy or like really oversized at that sort of bit of the leg. But I think if I was to do like a large portion of stockinette, I would definitely still go down, not a large portion of stockinette, sorry, a large portion of colourwork, then I would definitely still go down to the 2mm, because my stitches are just that much looser when I'm doing my colourwork. But yeah, it's not the end of the world for like the, what is it, 5 or 6 rounds that are on this sock. But yeah, in hindsight, I would have gone down a needle size. So when I showed these last week, I think I was at the ribbing of sock 2. So this is sock 2. And I was talking about the fact that I was going to probably run out of yarn. So the yarns that I used are Cheshire Yarns Peruvian Highland Wool for the like rainbow section in the colour Superstar, and then the green is Rico Socks Neon in the colour green, and then the rest of my socks, apart from my toe obviously, are Dandelion and Dogwood's sock yarn in the colour Lustre Wear, which was a Christmas colourway from like a couple of years ago. And so yeah, I was talking about the fact that I was going to run out of yarn for this top section, and that I had another ball of a sparkle base in the same kind of rainbow sort of variated colourway, and I did end up doing helical knitting for the entirety of this kind of like stockinette portion before I got to the colourwork chart, and I'm really glad that I did that, because I ran out of the Cheshire yarns right at the end of the colourwork. I think I had about that much left, like literally just enough to sew in my ends. So I'm really glad that I did do the helical knitting, and I think you can just tell, like this one definitely looks a little bit more saturated, because the other ball of yarn that I had was slightly more saturated, and yeah, so I think you can tell that they are obviously slightly different, but because it's a variegated colourway anyway, variegated, yeah, because it's a very sort of like heavily variegated colourway anyway, and it's all like rainbow and everything, I don't think you would really notice like if I wasn't like showing you like really up close like this. And you can see that this one has obviously got a slight sparkle to it from that sparkle base, but again, I don't think you're really going to notice. These are socks, they're not like going to be like here, you're not going to be staring at them, and to be honest, like they're just going to be on my feet, so I'm not really all that bothered. I'm glad that they match enough that like when I'm wearing them you wouldn't really notice that they're all that much different. So yeah, there was obviously that hurdle to hop over, and then the rest of the sock was pretty smooth sailing, to be honest. So in the end I ended up with 10 rounds of the 2x1 rib, and then there's I think 10 rounds before the colourwork of this Cheshire Yarns colourway, and then there's colourwork chart, and then 30 rounds of stockinette for the leg, the heel flap and gusset as pattern, and then after the gusset decreases I have 65 rounds for the foot. And then I did add in a contrast toe, and I'm so glad I added in that contrast toe because I ran out of the dandelion and dogwood that I was using as my main colour just before the toe of the second sock. So it kind of worked out really well. But even if I hadn't done the contrast toe and I had run out of yarn, I think all I would have done would have been to pull back the toe on sock 1 and knit them both as a contrast toe. So yeah, I'm glad I did make that decision because obviously then I almost ran out of yarn, but that's probably what I would have done to kind of counteract that anyway. So yeah, I'm really happy with how these turned out. I think they're going to be a really fun addition to my sock drawer, and I'm glad that I've now caught up on yet another one of the missed charts that I had from the Colourwork Cuff Club, so now I'm not so far behind. And I cast these on March the 14th and I cast them off on April the 22nd, so these took a grand total of 39 days to knit. And cost wise, the Cheshire Yarns, for one skein of that it cost me £21, the Rico Socks Neon is £8.50 a ball, and the Dandelion and Dogwood I believe was about £20 a skein, but I'm not sure because I bought this quite a while ago. And the pattern itself is £10.57. So the grand total for all of these balls of yarn for these socks was £60.07. But obviously I didn't pay that much. I did use this Cheshire Yarns to knit a hat for my daughter, and I ended up using the Dandelion and Dogwood to make a bonnet and a pair of booties for one of my husband's colleagues who had a baby recently. So yeah, I have used these yarns before, and to be honest, this green, like we've seen this green so many times, haven't we? I keep using it in various different pairs of socks. But anyway, yes, very glad to have them off the needles and ready to wear. Now we are also into whips, and my first whip is my Gr8 Gingham Raglan, which is a pattern by Jessie May Designs. I always want to say my Gr8 Gingham Pullover, but it's not, it's a Gr8 Gingham Raglan. So yeah, I always stumble on the name. But yes, so this is an all over colourwork bottom up raglan jumper, and I'm knitting size 1, and I'm using the recommended needles, which are a 4mm needle, but I'm knitting mine slightly off gauge by like 1 stitch, so my gauge is 1 stitch larger than the pattern. And I'm using Yarbo 2TR Ull in the colour Apple Blossom, which is this pink, and Cherry Pie, which is this red. So this is my main colour and this is my contrast. Not that you can really tell at the moment because I haven't done any of the like ribbing or anything. And yeah, so I am, like I say, knitting up size 1, and last week when I showed this I was, which way around does this go? Okay, so yeah, this is where the ribbing for the cuff will be, and then this is where my marker is. So that was what I had done last week, and then this is what I have done this week. So I've pretty much done the other half of this first sleeve, and then I've left my stitches on some tubing ready to connect them up for the raglan. And then I've also started sleeve 2, but I've only done the first like pattern repeat of sleeve 2. And again I decided to do a what is it called? Why do I always blank on this? Provisional cast on, there we go. Yeah, so again I've decided to do a provisional cast on for the sleeve, just so that I can make them match, because I thought if I end up with an extra round of like stockinette or anything in this one, then I want to make this one match. And I'm still kind of undecided on what I want to do for the ribbing. I'm still umming and ahhing over whether or not I want to do like the twisted rib that's in the pattern, or if I want to go and just do a normal 1x1 rib. I'm not really decided on that, so I decided to just do the provisional cast on like I did for the first sleeve. And so yeah, this pattern is so much fun to knit up. I absolutely love this colourwork chart. It's so simple and easy to remember, because essentially it's a 10 round repeat, but you just end up doing kind of like the same thing but offset on the first and second 5 lots of rounds, if that makes any sense. But yeah, it's just really intuitive and really easy to kind of read, and it's been really easy to memorize. So I haven't really actually had to look at the pattern apart from to like just double check how many pattern repeats I need and like what to do when you get to the top of the sleeve. And so I don't think I'm really going to need to look at it at all for the second sleeve. It's essentially just repeat what I did for the first one. And it's really easy to kind of like see your knitting grow whilst you're knitting this, because that chart is so kind of like simple and easy, and because it's on such small circumference at the moment, because it's just the sleeve, it's sort of just really whizzes around. By the time you've kind of like got into the sort of rhythm of knitting that round of the colour work, you're at the end of it and you're starting the next one. So it's really, really quick to knit up, and I'm really, really enjoying it, especially since now, obviously, like I say, I have memorised the chart, so I'm not having to look at the pattern. I can just do it by like reading what I've done on the previous row. So yeah, I think that this is really gonna fly off the needles, and then I will be on to the body. I think also this is just taking like next to no time, because there's no shaping in these sleeves. They are like balloon sleeves. So once I pick the stitches back up to do the ribbing, I will be doing a decrease round to like bring them in for the ribbing. And so yeah, because it's just a tube, I don't have to worry about any kind of like increases. I don't have any shaping. There's literally like just sort of a tube, and then you cast off. No, you don't even cast off. You put some stitches on hold for the underarm, and then yeah, you move on to the next piece. So yeah, I don't expect this to really sort of take me too long. I do really enjoy knitting this colourwork chart. So yeah, hopefully now that I'm like really into the sort of rhythm of knitting this second sleeve will also fly off the needles, and I'm really looking forward to kind of getting into the body and getting that done, and then getting the raglan done as well, because I do want to make some modifications to this pattern by adding short rows into the raglan. So I'm really excited to kind of get to that part, but to get to that part I need to get through the sleeves and the body first. So obviously this is, like I say, a bottom-up construction, but there are really good instructions in here for adding length to the sleeves. There is a short sleeve option as well, and there is a really good schematic at the end of the pattern to kind of like help you measure like your yoke depth and everything, to make sure that this is going to kind of like be the right length for your arm. And so I use that to make sure that this is going to be the right length on me. And I think when I measured, the yoke depth kind of hits around about here. So this sleeve is going to be quite long. Ooh, there we go. So yeah, it's going to be quite long, but to be honest, because it's got that balloon element, I want it to be a little bit longer, so it kind of like poofs over the ribbing a little bit. Because I really don't like sleeves when they're too short. So I think that this is going to be the perfect length. And I just knit mine to the length specified in the pattern, and my row gauge is the same as stated in the pattern, so I'm pretty sure that this is going to be the perfect length for me. It is kind of the same length roughly as the sleeves that I have on my Salty Days sweater. So yeah, this is roughly the same length as the sleeves on this jumper, so I think it's going to be perfect. But I do know that that's something that people do get concerned about when they're knitting bottom up constructions, like not being able to try things on and double check the length and everything. But yeah, there is a really good schematic in this to kind of help with that issue, which I always do find really useful. So yeah, this week I am just going to be working up the second sleeve, and like I say, hopefully I will sort of whiz through this as well. It does just work up so quickly, which is not what I expected from like an all over colourwork, essentially like, it's not fingering weight, is it? It's sport weight pattern. So yeah, hopefully I can get through that this week. And I cast this on March the 27th, and so it's been on my needles for 28 days, which actually, yeah, I'm not too fussed about. I am still in my first 2 balls of yarn, so this is really sort of not taken a huge amount of yarn either. So this is how much I've got left of each of the first skein, which I know is not really an easy way to show, but yeah, I've barely used any at all. And so that is quite nice. It is a really sort of lightweight sleeve that I've knit, so I think this is going to be a perfect spring layer because it will be sort of fairly windproof, because even though it's been warm, it has been really, really windy. So yes, but it'll be fairly windproof, so I won't really need anything over the top of this. But yeah, it'll still be warm enough. I don't know what I'm trying to say really. I'm hoping that it's going to be a nice warm sort of spring layer, but also pretty good for the autumn as well. So that was my Gr8 Gingham. So my next whip is my Charlie pullover, which is a pattern by MORECA Knit, and I am knitting up size 1 and using BC Garn Simila Melange in the colours vanilla and light green, olive tangle. And I'm using a 3.25 and a 2.25mm needle to knit these. This yarn is just so bouncy and squishy and soft. I just absolutely love it. But yeah, I haven't done a huge amount of work on this week. I feel like last time I talked about this, I had done so much on it and it was like my main project and I was just absolutely loving it. And then this week, I just haven't picked it up that much. It's been quite a busy week, obviously, with all the bank holidays and everything that we had because of the Easter weekend. And so I've just been focusing a lot more on my smaller projects, and this just hasn't got that much work done on it. So this is where I am now. This marker here is where I was last time I showed this. So all I've done is finish up this second green stripe, and then I finished the ball of yarn, so my second ball of the main colour, on the body. So I did, what was that, 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds on the body in the main colour before I finished that ball of yarn. And then I decided I was going to pick up a sleeve. So this sleeve is like, it's like a saddle shoulder construction, but it's more of like a set-in sleeve than a drop shoulder. But in the pattern photos, it really did look like a drop shoulder. But I'm quite happy that it's got like that set-in sleeve kind of construction, because I do love a set-in sleeve. I think it fits my shoulders really nicely because I've got really, not really narrow shoulders, but they are quite narrow. And so sometimes with a drop shoulder, it sits like all the way down here. And yeah, just kind of drowns me a little bit. So yeah, I'm really glad that there is so much of like an emphasis on fit in this pattern. It's just a really lovely pattern. It's really well written, and there's just so much attention to detail in it, and like there are so many like little useful bits in there, but it doesn't like completely overwhelm you with information. So yeah, it's definitely a really well written pattern, and I feel like it was well worth the money that I paid for it. So I worked the short rows for the sleeve, and then I have just done the first decrease in the sleeve, which is, where is it? Which is just there, and then I've just started the first of the stripes on the sleeve. So there's 4 stripes on the body and 4 stripes on each sleeve, and then the rest of it is worked in your main colour. But like I say, just not a huge amount of work done on this. There was quite a lot of work done that had to go into the short rows. There were quite a lot of short rows to create this sleeve cap, but yeah, I didn't really pick this up that much this week. And to be honest, I don't really know why. I thought I'd done more work on this than I had, but yeah, hopefully I will be getting straight back into this week, because I do really want to have this to wear. I don't want to not be knitting it because I really enjoy the yarn, and I'm really enjoying the pattern, but I do also really want the finished object. So I'm kind of in that weird like contradictory state where I'm just want to work on it all the time, but also don't want it to be finished. So yeah, it's just a really lovely pattern, and it's really lovely yarn, and it was just a really nice match. And I'm glad that I came across this yarn, to be honest, whilst I was looking for sport weight yarns, because it's just so delightful. So this pattern does also have instructions to add in like jogless stripes for the stripe pattern when you get into the round, and I have been doing that. Where is my beginning of round? So yeah, I have been doing that for my in the round stripes. And so if I can get this to actually line up. So here is my beginning of round. So there is where I added in my first stripe. And I think it is pretty much invisible. I think once I've sewn in the ends, you won't be able to see it at all. And yeah, I think it's really, really effective. I wasn't really going to bother, but to be honest, I'm really glad that I have, because I think it just elevates this piece just ever so slightly more, and just, yeah, makes it look really seamless, really polished. And it's probably the best kind of like method I've found for jogless stripes. Like, that is really invisible. Like, even I couldn't work out where it was for a second there. So I'm really, really happy with it. I am like cutting my yarns when I get to each stripe in this though, because there are such big gaps, and because they are so, like, the stripes are so wide, I thought it would probably be best for like my tension to go in and cut the yarns for each stripe, and then I'll just sew in the ends afterwards, because otherwise I thought if I've got like a green bit of yarn that's running all the way down between these two stripes, it might pull ever so slightly, or like the tension's going to look funny. I mean, I think it works fine when you've got like really short stripes, or if you've got like 4 or 5 round stripes, but these ones are just so wide. I thought, I'm going to catch my fingers in there when I'm putting it on, or I'm going to like end up with like a funny couple of stitches or something. So yeah, it means that there's going to be a fair few more ends to sew in, but to be honest, I'm not really all that bothered. I think it's going to work out better for this garment in the end than like just trying to like not have that many ends to sew in. But yeah, hopefully I will get some more work done on this week, because it is such a lovely pattern and yarn to work with. But yeah, just didn't get that much work this week, but that's fine. I would like to get this sleeve finished at least, but we shall see. So I cast this on April the 2nd, and so it's currently been on my needles for 22 days. And I love this. I want to wear it, but I don't want it to be finished because I really like knitting it, and I'm having a dilemma about it. So yeah, that was my Charlie pullover, and my next whip is a new cast on. So once I finished my socks, I kind of wanted a fairly easy project to knit on like whilst we were out and about, or that was just easy to like pick up and put down and didn't really need like a huge amount of like looking at the pattern or anything. And so I decided to cast on a Manhattan hat by Tori, and this is a hat pattern that has been on my like to knit list for a long time, and it's just like a 1x1 ribbed hat, but it's got these statement decreases at the crown, and that was kind of what really drew me to this pattern, because I really wanted a sort of more statement ribbed hat, because I have a weekend hat by Petite Knit, but it's just not quite long enough to sort of like sit as high as I want it to. I don't really like hats to like sit really close to my head. I like to have a little bit more room in there, and I thought that this hat was going to be perfect for that. And so I picked up the yarn for this hat whilst I was at East Anglia Yarn Festival, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to cast that on instead of like trying to get through like the colourwork of another pair of the Colourwork Cuff Club socks, or trying to get through the ribbing of a pair of socks. I'm just going to cast on a hat and just have that as like an easy like one skein project to chuck in my bag when we go to the park or anything, or if I've just got a couple of minutes where I can just get one round in. So yeah, this is the yarn that I'm using. This is Veronika Yarn's Superwash Merino DK. I'm not 100% sure what the base is called actually. Let me get the label. So yeah, this is Veronika Yarn's DK. It's a superwash merino, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and you get 200 meters per 100 grams. But it doesn't actually have a colourway name. It was in the like bargain bin on the Veronika Yarn stand at East Anglia Yarn Festival. So I've got 2 of these skeins to make this hat, because I want to make the double brimmed option, and so I didn't think I was going to have quite enough out of one skein. If I do though, then my daughter has requested a matching one, so I suppose I'll be casting on another one once I'm done. So I'm knitting the adult medium size. This pattern has so many sizes from like child all the way up to like adult large, So I'm using the adult medium size for mine, and I'm using a 3.75mm needle, which is what was recommended in the pattern. My ribbing is generally quite loose, but the pattern is written for a DK weight yarn, and I'm using, no, sorry, the pattern is written for a worsted weight yarn, and I'm using a DK weight yarn. So I kind of thought that the smaller needle size would allow my ribbing to kind of be more on gauge. I've not actually checked my gauge for this, to be honest, but it seems like it's perfectly fine. There's enough stretch in there and everything, and it's a superwash yarn, so I expect it to grow a little bit as well. So I haven't really done a huge amount, to be honest. I have done the tubular cast on that is recommended in the pattern, but to be honest, because I'm doing the double brimmed option, I don't really think that it was really worth doing the tubular cast on. I could have just done a long tail cast on, because we're never going to see it because it's going to be like right on the inside. But yeah, I did the tubular cast on anyway, in case I change my mind and I just want a single brim or something. And then I've just been working 1x1 rib. So I've done about 6 centimeters so far, and I think I need something like 32 centimeters for the double brimmed option. So yeah, it's just going to be endless amounts of 1x1 rib. So I don't expect this to be done anytime soon, but to be honest, we're not really in the kind of season for needing like a full double brimmed hat. So this will be ready for me in the autumn when I need a new hat. But I have been enjoying having this in my bag just to kind of knit a row here and there. And it's kind of been like a nice kind of welcome change for my hands as well, knitting something on a slightly larger circumference than knitting a pair of socks. So yeah, I am looking forward to having this. The yarn is really nice and kind of bouncy and easy to work up. It's not at all splitty. I think the variegation in the yarn is working out really nicely. Like there's no like real obvious pooling yet. But to be honest, I find that like rib kind of helps out with that a little bit more than like stockinette. I think it's a little bit less noticeable when you're working 1x1 rib. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I think the colour's going to work quite well with the rest of my wardrobe, and it's going to be nice to have another kind of hat option once it is finished. But like I say, I'm in no rush, and it's just nice to have like a little simple project on the go. So I cast this on April the 19th, so it's currently been in my needles for 5 days, and to be honest, I don't expect it to be done anytime soon. So that brings me to my final whip, and it's another pair of socks. So I've been saying for a while that I wanted to catch up on the couple of charts that I missed from the COLORWORK Cuff Club to kind of get back on track with them, and I was missing both February and December. So I finally decided to cast on the COLORWORK Cuff Club February chart. So again, this is a pattern by Summer Lee, and I am using the Wicked mini skein set by The Lonely Knitter. I've shown this a couple of times, I think, and I have finally cast them on. So you got 5 mini skeins in this mini skein set, and obviously they were themed on the Wicked movie that came out recently, and so they're all greens and pinks, and I am using them to knit up the February chart. So the February chart had an option for like you could knit the full chart or you could just knit the hearts, and I decided to do the full chart since I had 5 colours to work with, but I have had to like swap them around a little bit. So where's my big, there, right, so this is what they're looking like. I'm knitting size medium again. I did 15 rounds of the rib on a 2mm needle, and then I've knit my colourwork on a 2mm needle as well, and then I've just changed to a 2.25 for my stockinette portion, and I am going to stripe the minis throughout the foot. So I'm pretty much ready for the heel in these now. So I had to change one bit of the chart. So initially the chart was going to have me use this green as the background colour here and the pink for the hearts, but I decided to swap that around because when I finished this row, like this bit of like zigzag here, and then added in this green, there just wasn't a lot of contrast there, and I just thought it just looked a bit murky, and so I decided to swap in the pink as the background colour and the green for the hearts. and I think it looks much better. I think it gives it a little bit more contrast, and to be honest, I quite like the green hearts. I think they're cute and a little bit different. So yeah, I think that these have worked out really nicely. Obviously they're not like as high contrast as other versions of this chart, but to be honest, I'm not all that fussed. I really wanted to use these minis for this chart, and I think they do look really nice. And I think having the striped foot is gonna sort of tie in all the colours really nicely. So this is obviously sock 1, and I've not cast on sock 2 yet. This chart took me a lot longer to knit up than I thought it would. Usually I'm quite quick at getting through the Colourwork Cuff Club charts, but I think because I was using so many different colours, and obviously I was like subbing them in for other colours that are in the chart, I did get a little bit confused when I was going through it and being like, oh, which colour am I using where? But yeah, it worked out well in the end, and I think doing the second one should be a little bit more simple because I'll be able to reference the first one as I go through. But I do really love how these are working up. I think once they've been blocked and all the yarns have kind of evened out and my tension's evened out, they're going to look even better as well. But yeah, I do have a lot of ends in these. So if I flip these the other way around, I've obviously got like all of this end spaghetti to deal with. So I'm leaving that for future me to deal with. It wasn't really something that I really wanted to deal with the other day when I was knitting these. So yeah, I'm not really sure how much fun that's gonna be. I think I might try and sew the ends in actually before I do the heel flap, and then at least it's kind of out of the way, and I can kind of just get back into knitting the foot, because I'll then have a fair amount of ends for the foot because there'll be so many different colour changes that I don't really want to carry the yarns down, because I did want to do fairly wide stripes on the foot. So yes, I am not really in any rush to get these finished. I do want to get the other Colourwork chart done, so I think I'll try and get through that. But yeah, I'm not in a huge amount of rush to kind of get them off the needles. I kind of want to just have the foot as like an easy sort of pick up and put down project. And I am aware of obviously the fact that the May chart is going to come out soon. So I think my aim is to, like I say, get through the chart of the second sock and then just kind of have them as like easy breezy knitting throughout the rest of the foot. So yeah, I absolutely love how these are turning out. I think they are so much fun. And I'm really glad that I did choose this mini set for these, even if they aren't like as high contrast as I really thought they were going to be. But yeah, the mini set is on Laura's Luxe sock base, so it's a 75% merino, 25% nylon. So again, these are just super soft, and the Luxe sock base from the Lonely Knitter is just a really nice sock yarn to work up. I've got a couple of other skeins of it, and I've used it before for garments as well, and yeah, I just really like it. So that is the progress on my February chart. So yeah, once I've got through those, I've only got one to catch up on. So I might try and do that maybe if I finish these and I finish the March chart quickly, then I'll try and get the December chart cast on. But like I say, I'm not in any rush. I would like to obviously get caught up before we get to the end, but I've still got May, June and July to do that. So yeah, I'm not putting a huge amount of pressure on myself to do it. So I cast these on April the 21st, so these have currently been on my needles for 3 days. So that is all of the knitting that I have to show this week. I do have a couple of acquisitions. So like I said last week, I did have to order a new Swift. I ended up going for the Knit Pro umbrella Swift, but to get that order to the point where I didn't have to pay for postage, I decided to add a couple of yarns in with that order. So the first one is a really practical purchase because I did need to get this for a pattern that I want to knit up as part of my spring knitting plans. So I picked up one plate of the Plitalopi unspun by Lopi in the colour Ivory Beige, which is this beautiful like mild beige colour. but it's a little bit warmer. I think it's showing up quite cool on camera, but it is a little bit of a sort of warmer greyish kind of colour. And I picked this up so that I could use it as the unspun yarn in the My Honey vest that I want to make. And I'm going to be using these two yarns from Skein in the Stitch as the two contrast colours. So these are both the non-superwash natural 4-ply merino from Skein in the Stitch. So it's 100% non-superwash merino and it's 100 grams. And you get 400 meters in each. So this is the undyed, everything's falling off my shelves now. So this is the undyed natural 4-ply, and then this is the Angelica, Eliza and Peggy colourway. And I think that these three together is just going to look so lovely. I think this ivory beige ties in really well with the Angelica, Eliza and Peggy, and then I think the natural like undyed colour is gonna just complement them really nicely and let this hand-dyed skein really shine. So yeah, I grabbed one of those, and these I also picked up whilst I was at East Anglia Yarn Festival, so that will be my Honey vest. And then I saw that there was a sale on some of the Rowan yarn that they were going to be discontinuing. So I picked up 5 skeins of this Rowan Valley tweed, and this is a fingering weight tweed yarn. It's very plump and sort of squishy and sort of loosely spun. And I am going to knit my husband a new jumper out of this. I'm not sure what, but he really does enjoy a fingering weight jumper. And you get 207 meters per 50 grams for this, and I think that should be just enough to knit him a probably stockinette fingering weight sweater. So yes, I picked up 5 skeins of that, and I think it's going to be a really lovely addition to his wardrobe, to be honest. And I haven't showed him this yet, but if he doesn't want it, then I'm more than happy to knit myself up something in it, because who doesn't need a nice kind of tweedy neutral jumper in their wardrobe? So that is everything from me this week. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, then please do feel free to give it a like. If you're new here, then please do consider subscribing. It would be lovely to have you here. I'd love to know what you guys have been making whilst you have been watching. And yeah, I will catch up with you all next week with another podcast. Happy making!